Remember the 2000 presidential election?
Florida is too close to call.
The election that was decided by America's biggest swing state, Florida.
537, the number of votes that changed the course of American history.
Florida's electorate is famously split, but that might be about to change. In this year's midterms, Florida will vote on Amendment 4, which would automatically restore the right to vote for people with felony records, except those convicted of murder or a sexual offense. That would add 1.4 million new voters to Florida's electorate. So how could Amendment 4 change things? Well, a lot of researchers have tried to answer that question, and some of their conclusions will probably surprise you. Some experts believe that if former prisoners were given the right to vote, it could push Florida blue. This is kind of the obvious conclusion. Florida's former prison population disproportionately includes Black Americans. There are a lot of reasons for that, but that's for another video. What you need to know here is that Black Americans have overwhelmingly voted Democrat in recent presidential elections. We talked to Gilda R. Daniels, a law professor at the University of Baltimore.
Right now in Florida, 1 in 5 African Americans are barred from voting. African American voters are very reliable Democratic voters, so I think that would certainly almost immediately impact how successful Democrats would be.
And some of the research we read supports this. One 2004 study estimated that 73% of former prisoners would vote for a Democratic candidate. But there are some issues with this study. They didn't actually poll former prisoners. They only looked at the demographics of former prisoners and matched them to the voting habits of the broader population. But another study pointed in a different direction. Although Florida's former prison population is disproportionately Black, there are more white former prisoners. And white former prisoners are lower income and less educated, which puts them in a group that has consistently shown support for Republican candidates. With this mixed data, the amendment has won a lot of support across the ideological spectrum, with no large-scale opposition emerging. No easy feat in today's polarized politics. Andrew Gilliam, the Democratic nominee for governor of Florida, has come out in favor of the amendment.
We're gonna be a state that believes in second chances.
And while his Republican opponent, Ron DeSantis, opposes the amendment, Freedom Partners, a group connected to those who support him and who are funded by the Koch brothers, have come out in favor. And the public agrees. Polls show that 70% of Floridians favor reenfranchisement. We talked to Nate Persily, professor of law at Stanford University.
There's an assumption that because the imprisoned population is both poorer and has higher shares of minority populations, that therefore reenfranchisement would be favorable to Democrats, but there's no hard evidence that suggests that.
So some say this could help the Democrats, and others think this will help the Republicans. But at the end of the day, there's a bigger question here. How many of the ex-prisoners will vote? An earlier study from 2004 found higher voter turnout rates for former prisoners. But again, it was limited because they assumed former prisoners would vote like the general population. A more recent study says they don't. This one looked at government records of voting trends of former prisoners in Erie County, New York, and found that only 5% of former prisoners voted in the elections they looked at.
When a man is freed from jail, the first place he goes is not to the polling place. And so we shouldn't expect, a huge turnout from the ex-felon community.
So back to the original question. Could this group swing Florida's electorate and push the state red or blue? The answer is unclear. But experts like Daniels stress that this shouldn't be the focus.
As a voting rights expert, I am more concerned about allowing people to have access to the ballot instead of who they might vote for.